We are live here on Night Shift. I'm Eric Lopez. Drew Gluchov joining me here. UCF victorious over Michigan, 85-71. I know that's something that sounds good for Drew for many reasons.
Hearing a Michigan my loss. Born and raised Buckeye heart.
Make sure, of course, you follow us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. We, of course, another edition of Night Shift here. We're going to answer your questions and comments. We'll read them. You can follow us on Facebook as well as on Twitter as well. And, of course, you can listen to this on our podcast feed as well, where you listen to our regular blackandgoldbanneret.com content. And, of course, you can have our podcast there weekly. And blackandgoldbanneret.com, which we had you in-depth coverage of the Michigan game. Kyle Nash is at the game, covering the game. Noah Goldberg is there shaking photos. You'll see all of that on our site, blackandgoldbanneret.com, for all this coverage of the Michigan game. But, Drew, wow, that's all I got to say first. What a second half. 85-71 UCF with the victory. What a turnaround. Michigan, and we'll get to this later on the show, why a lot of you missed the first half because the game did not air on ESPN2 because it was on ESPN News. We'll get to the reasons why for that. Blame Josh Heupel for that. We'll get to that later, why that is. But, so it was a 5-point game. Nothing really extraordinary. First half, some back and forth. Dylan Gabriel had not Dylan Gabriel. He's gone, long gone. Darren Green, he's here, and then kept UCF in the game, but nobody else really stepped up offensively. Second half, Michigan gets off to a fast start. They're up 12. And I'm thinking, oh, boy, this could get away from them. And I even tweeted out at Eric Lopez, who's going to step up other than Darren Green to score? Well, then Braylon Mayhem must have heard it because he lit it up, scored 22 points in the second half. UCF went on a torrid pace, 54 points in the second half, shot over 70% from the field, and run away from Michigan to pick up a significant 85-71 win. And arguably, I said this on the podcast, Drew, this week, the biggest non-conference home game in UCF basketball history. Great crowd out there, and they deliver a big win.
I mean, I have to kind of go in between on the biggest one because Michigan should have been the biggest one, but they've been a disappointment this year. Let's be honest. They were a top 15 team that came out 7-4. They weren't ranked, but I would say it's probably the biggest from a stature standpoint. I mean, that Michigan is a blue blood program. That's a big win. Obviously, you wish they were ranked, and they had a better run and would really help UCF out, with that net rating, towards the end of the season. But it's a big game. They rose to the occasion. Brandon Mayhem was on fire in the second half. As a team, they were 8 for 8 3-pointers in the second half. I mean, they just could not miss. That's both good and not so good. On the good side, hey, it propelled them to 54 points in the second half. They outscored Michigan 54-36. That's huge to pull away. On the bad side, man, good luck trying to do that again. That's basically, you got the cheat codes in. You got that one-time Konami code and Gradius that you put in or in Contra, then you're on your own the rest of the way because that was phenomenal. I mean, it was NBA Jam. They hit a few shots. They're on fire. They couldn't miss anything else. But Eric, I'll be honest, that also opens door for concern because you look at the 3-pointers, which they were, Green 7 of 9, Mayhem 5 of 7, everyone else 0 for 4. It was a 2-man show. Green with 27 points, Mayhem with 26. No one else got in the double figures. And Mayhem is not a consistent player. He did great against Florida State last year and then vanished to the point where they had to send a search party looking for him. I'm concerned it could happen again. But enjoy the win. We don't want to rain too much on the parade. Enjoy the win, but get ready for the next one.
Well, to your point, Mayhem, 22 points, 7 of 7 from the floor in the second half, 5 for 5 on the 3-point line in the second half, all second half. really, if you've been following this program, it reminds you a lot of the Florida State game last year. In fact, I did a night shift with Brian Murphy. I remember Brian was tossing his hat. We were going crazy. We were excited because Mahan had a similar performance like tonight. The difference was then he didn't really duplicate that again the rest of the year. Darren Green, on the other hand, has been doing this all year. He's been their best offensive player this season. He's been their go-to guy. He is now in conversation with Matt Williams as possibly the best three-point shooter in the history of the program. Maybe the best shooter, period.
I did tweet he's Matt Williams incarnated.
He might be better. I think he's a better offensive player, right, than Matt Williams ever was. And I think that's the debate for shooting. He's been there the whole time. He's been the constant. Mahan's a wild card. You're right. You look at UCF when they've been successful going back to last year. The scoring came from Darren Green, Mahan, and Isaiah Adams. Now, Adams, only 3 minutes tonight in the game against Michigan. It was an interesting game. Dawkins kind of went different. When you have, depth, you have some different options. But he kind of really played a lot of the guys shortened the bench a little bit. I think he went with the hot hands, and I don't blame him for that. But two guys scoring offensively, and then Jameel Reynolds really gave him some nice minutes off the bench offensively. The bigs for UCF. This is not going to show up on the box score here, Drew. But I thought Mbake, he's made an impact all year. The stat line only says 9.7 rebounds. What it doesn't tell you, 2 blocks. What it doesn't tell you is that him and C.J. Walker and Reynolds, they did a nice job in the paint. One of the concerns I had was the interior game against Michigan. Michigan crushed UCF last year inside with Dickinson. Dickinson, who was a monster in last year's game, held to 12.9 rebounds in this game. UCF actually out-rebounded Michigan in the second half of the game. And, they only lost the rebound battle by 5. They were down double digits at one point in the rebounding category. The bigs inside, I thought, were huge for UCF in this game against Michigan. Obviously, the offense took care of itself on fire. But the interior defense for UCF, which we spoke to Taylor Young about that on the podcast, which we encourage you to check out if you haven't checked it out yet, because we kind of also talk about the rest of the year. This is the best interior defense UCF's had since obviously Taco Fall was wearing the black and gold here.
Oh, well, I mean, it's without a doubt. When you have a big man that's bigger than most men, it's going to disrupt things in the middle. And, even though Michigan has their own big man in Hutchinson, he got in foul trouble, and it really changed the complexion of the game. He wasn't really able to let loose as much, and UCF was able to avoid getting into foul trouble. I mean, no one had more than 2 fouls for the Knights. That's huge. Dickinson had 4. He was back against the wall. 2 other Wolverines with 3. That's huge. Having that control of the fouls makes a big difference because it changes how you play. You're not as aggressive. You kind of have to take a much more passive approach to playing defense. And they were able to work their way inside. And then the passes out. And of course, Mahan and Green were just on absolute fire. And they had napalm poured on it. It stuck to them. It burned. And it just, everything was just going up in flames. You look at the rest of the scoring and it was quiet. Darius Perry, you expect more out of him. 0 for 9 from the field, had 6 points, all from the free throw line. But he was able to dish the ball out, had 7 assists, moving the ball around. While you expect better shooting, obviously that end of the half dunk was a little bit of a timing blunder. If he went for the layup, that would have been 2 points. But the fact that he's still distributing the ball is important. You need that field general out there, even when he's having a rough night, still doing what he needs to do to help will his team to win. He's, obviously he's one of the most experienced guys on the team. They need that. Obviously, you talked about Isaiah Adams. He's been kind of a disappointment all year. He's just hasn't been the same guy we saw last year.
Hasn't been able to get into a rhythm this year yet.
Haven't been able to get in a rhythm, and is kind of falling out of the rotation. I mean, he played 13 minutes. And he was tied for second lowest on the team in minutes. You had Reynolds at 12, you had Freeman and Adams at 13. That's not a lot of time. And he was 2 for 5 from the field, 0 for 2 for 3, 4 points and a couple fouls. That's it. That's his whole line. That's not what you expect out of the guy who's lit it up last year. And then CJ Walker is the other guy. I mean, he's such a high energy guy, but you expect more on the offensive side, and you're just not seeing it. 4 points, 2 for 3 from the field, 5 rebounds, had a couple assists, but 23 minutes, and that's all you generated. Those are both below their season average. I mean, CJ Walker's averaging
had 3 blocks
points.
though. He had 3 blocks, 5 boards. He's not going to be Reynolds, I would argue, kind of gave him some punch offensively inside with 5 points, couple of baskets, 2 boards, created some charges himself defensively. I don't know if offensively you can expect, especially against these Michigan size, that they're going to be able to score a ton.
Remember, you got to step up to these big schools, especially if you get into postseason play. These are the schools you're going to be facing. So this is actually great for UCF. Win, lose, or draw, because you get that that chance to actually work against a team that you may face again in the postseason. Because Michigan's going to be at least an at-large in the NCAA tournament. They've been kind of a disappointment, but they still have a decent record right now. They're 7-5, but they've had some good wins. And they have a lot more time in the Big Ten to kind of work on some of those bottom feeders. But CJ Walker averages just under 10 points a game. So I mean, you expect a little bit more, especially in your bigs. Yeah, I mean, Michigan does have good bigs, but that's part of the out of conference slate is you want to play
no question
teams to get your guys to rise up, and we saw that of Mahan. He rose up, and he seems to rise up in the Florida State. Now he's got to keep it going to the conference play. It didn't happen last year. This was the last out of conference game for UCF this year. The rest is all in the American. They lost out on the Florida State game, got canceled. So that's it. Now it's time to move on and focus on the American. You won't see that kind of front court talent maybe outside of in the league. Houston's got some bad injuries that are mounting up. They're looking towards a big collapse.
Yeah, Marcus Sasser out for the year with an injury. We'll see how Kelvin Sampson and Houston respond to that. And I think that's why this is a big win for UCF. It's also a big win for the American, because there's been a down so far season for the American in basketball. Memphis has had massive issues. Losing to Tulane shorthanded. You just don't know where they're going. No marquee wins in the league. This was a big pickup for the league to get a UCF to try to move up there with Houston perhaps as maybe being a contender in the American. They were talking about that on the telecast. If Brandon Mayhem, to your point, Drew, if he can show up like this on a more consistent basis, UCF's a different team.
Oh, yeah. And and Mike Doty makes a very good point in our comments. If you've got 2 guys lighting up, the others don't have to step up as much. But remember, Mahan didn't show up until the second half. So Green was on fire the whole game. I mean, that's just what he does. He C3, he B3. So you need someone in the first half to rise up. And it was an ugly first half. I mean, there was a lot of mistakes on both sides. UCF's strength is their defense, and they forced Michigan to a lot of errors. But they themselves, I mean, even though Michigan did themselves in the second half, there is no excuse for a turnover on the inbounds. None. And UCF screwed up. Yeah, there's no excuse for that. That's just mental. That's not even anything really complex. That's just basic mental fundamentals. And you got to get that out of your head. You got to get those jitters out of there. No program your face is going to be that big that you're going to get in your own way. So shake off the cobwebs. I mean, that part, I wanted to throw something at the TV, but my wife would have killed me if I did.
Yeah, I wouldn't have recommended that. By the way, people have commented, reach out. No, for the record, you meant Dickinson, not you mentioned Hutchinson in foul trouble. You meant Dickinson. Obviously, there's Hutchinson's getting prepared for a football game.
Yeah, there's an instant in there, and the Lysdexia kicks in and you start putting words in different letters in different places. And before you know it, you have a whole different person.
Comments here. Jessica Sheldon. Oh my God, this has to be one of the biggest wins in school history.
It's a big win. It's a big home win, which UCF doesn't have a huge track record of. I'd say their biggest win, obviously, is still that UConn win at the Battle of Atlantis
That was a neutral court in the Bahamas, right?
I would say that's their biggest regular season win. This is up there in their biggest home win. Obviously,
well, I disagree with that. Well, are we talking non-conference or are we talking non-conference or overall?
Well, I like to separate them. I would put it as a non-conference thing because
that's different.
Conference play you don't really have control over. It just kind of is. I kind of put this a little bit below College of Charleston just because they were a ranked team and they were the first of the ranked teams.
Here's what I would say, because if we included conference, I think the biggest regular season win in program history was the Houston game when College Game Day was there.
Well, that was away.
That was away. Right. I was just, as far as home, you could argue maybe that senior night against Cincinnati that year, which the storm the court, senior night for BJ Taylor, Taco Fall. You knew at that point, Brian, our old buddy Brian Murphy mentioned he was there. He knew at that moment when they won that game, they were going to the NCAA tournament and end that drought. They hadn't been to the tournament since 2005. When you won that game against Cincinnati, it was almost like an unofficial punch of the ticket to the tournament. But that was a conference game, and that's why I wanted to make the difference. You can make the argument that this could end up being the biggest home win. It depends on a couple of things.
Depends what both teams do.
Bingo. How does Michigan? Because obviously I watched the post game, and Seth Greenberg and LaFonso Ellis, they were crushing Michigan. Look, Michigan has struggled. We spoke to our buddies at Maize and Blue, who's been covering them, and they miss Franz Wagner, who's playing with the Magic, and their defense intensity isn't what it was a year ago. So they got some questions. I still think they're talented. I think they'll figure it out. But we'll see how they do, and then we'll also see what UCF does because. As I mentioned, a year ago, me and Brian were doing the same show with the same context after UCF went to Tallahassee and beat Florida State, who was ranked. And we said, wow, this is huge. And then what happened was UCF got caught in some COVID protocol issues, and they never really recovered from that. And so because of the circumstances, we don't know. But look, let's be real. It's still all the positive. There's nothing wrong with beating Michigan. This is a good problem, good conversation to have. It's up there. This will be a memorable performance, a memorable night for this program.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be memorable. And you're right. It really depends on how the season shakes out. UCF 9-2. They should be receiving votes in the polls. I don't expect them to be ranked yet. Michigan's a good win. Unfortunately, they're not that good of a win just because of their disappointing start. But UCF keeps winning. The pollsters are going to notice. With Houston, facing a cliff in front of them, an opportunity for the Knights to really jump ahead. This is a team that really has figured himself out. You look at they popped the stats up, and we knew this going into the season. Almost the entirety of minutes and points came back. This is a team with experience and with chemistry, and you're seeing it. You're seeing the extra pass, the defensive rotation. You don't just get that out of a vacuum. That takes chemistry and understanding of the different players on the court and what each guy can do, and communication. That takes time, and they've got it, and completely made a well-coached Michigan team look lost on the court. Juwan Howard is an excellent coach, and with the experience that these players had, it made Dawkins' job easier, and it made Michigan look silly in the second half.
Matt J chimes in with the arena looked like it was going off when the comeback started. Boy, it was electric.
Oh man,
it was a fun atmosphere. It looked like on TV. It wasn't as packed as it was being hyped a lot as close to a sellout and this and that. There were some empty seats. I don't know if that's just people were standing around. Maybe there's some space. I'm not going to be critical with everything that's going on about attendance.
There were a lot of Michigan fans there, though.
Well, and that's not a surprise to say the least.
It makes sense. You've got the big game in Miami tomorrow. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's a nice few-hour drive. They could officially do that. This is Night Shift. Eric Lopez alongside Drew Gluchov. Let's bring in our third member of the team.
Hey.
Bryson Turner.
Hey.
You've been following social media. What's been kind of the feedback right now on social media from this game?
Actually, guys, I'm having a little bit of a camera trouble. As you can see, I got a new laptop for Christmas, and so my camera zoom, I got to go back out and log back in real quick so I can zoom out a little bit, so that way I'm not zoomed in my face. So give me a second. Let me.
First world problems.
Man, technical issues.
My computer's too new.
Anyway, all right. He comes in. I think he's going to get some comments for us. All right, we'll continue. We got some more comments here. Fallen Hero writing, dark horse NCAA tournament team. Well, it could be. It could be. It depends. Yeah, this helps. This helps. You lose this game, Drew, you really don't have anything on the resume from a non-conference standpoint. You lost a close game to Oklahoma, lost at Auburn. You don't get the FSU game. So at least you have something here to work with. You're still going to have to do very well in the conference. There's a lot of pitfalls there. Could be a wide open league. I think it's a 2-bid league, maybe 3-bid league, depending on how everything plays out. But this is a good start.
Oh, absolutely. UCF going into today, obviously it's not updated yet, but they're ranked 50th in the the net rankings. Michigan 36th. So obviously that's an important quad one victory. Michigan 0-3 in quad one games. UCF now 1-1. As we know, the out of conference schedule for the conference is what differentiates one conference versus the other. You lose those games, the whole conference just shifts down. And that's what's going to hurt UCF because they have to play, a South Florida who's absolutely horrendous right now in their net rings. They're 246th, Tulsa 210, Tulane 192. In fact, then East Carolina and Temple are in the 150s. And once you get past them, you get a big break. SMU's the next one at 70, and it goes up there. But UCF's second in the conference in net rankings at 50. That's both good and not so good because that means UCF's going to be playing down a bit with these teams as opposed to playing up to pull the rankings up. So they can't afford to lose to, an East Carolina,
correct,
or a Tulsa. They can't afford that. That could take them out of tournament.
Well, and I know this is something you don't like to say, but if you're a UCF fan, you're going to become a Michigan fan the rest of the year.
Ugh, no.
You're going to have
standards.
Well, you may not, but everybody else is. You want the resume to that win to look better and better, especially if they're going to play in the Big Ten, which is a strong league. So you hope that win kind of gains traction as the rest of it goes. Some interesting comments here.
I would rather have 4.5 gallons of mayonnaise poured over me than have to root for Michigan.
For those that don't know, Drew's got family background. He's Ohio State. We're not going to get into all that.
Cleveland.
Yeah, I know you are. Question. This was the first night I actually felt Darius Johnson was the better court general. Darius Johnson was the highly recruit 4-star. Getting the minutes there behind Darius Perry. The future's bright. Johnny Dawkins has compared him to a BJ Taylor type. He makes good decisions. I thought he was solid in his 16 minutes in his 21 minutes of play, 4 points, 3 boards, 4 assists. He's getting better and better by the day. Darius Perry had a quiet night, 6 points from in the game, 0 for 9 from the field, 6 of 8 from the line. Did have 7 assists though. And Drew, that's the step. That's the key.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I was saying before. You can have an off night, but your point guard still has to be able to distribute the ball and at least get it to guys who can make their shots. And so he was getting it to Mahan. He was getting it to Darren Green. They were making their shots. And in fact, Mahan and Green were pretty good at passing the ball too. Green with 4 assists, Mahan with 3 of his own. That's some good ball distribution. If one guy's covered, get it to the other guy and let him shoot it up because in that second half, neither could miss.
This is Night Shift here on the Black and Gold Banneret. Eric Lopez, also Drew Gluchov.
All right.
Turner back here with us.
All right.
He's back.
All right. A little bit better. So, hope you guys like it. Brand new laptop, brand new camera. Love it. And honestly, looking through social media reaction, I think this is a brand new team in a sense for UCF to root for because really think about the timing of this game tonight. UCF football goes and defeats the Florida Gators in the Gasparilla Bowl. Football season officially done. The very next game for the UCF men's basketball team is against this Michigan team, which is probably their biggest non-conference matchup of the season. and they go win it by 14 points. Absolute perfect timing. Absolute perfect timing for that. So I think that's because I'm looking on social media and I'm basically seeing a lot of reactions of just absolute wow from a lot of people. One of them that holy forking shirt balls from the Good Place. One of them is UCF to all of college sports, and it's that thing from Captain Phillips where the guy goes, look at me, I'm the captain now, and it's major from across of everyone just being completely shocked that UCF men's basketball managed to pull this
This is a good
win
team.
off.
I don't know why everyone's so shocked.
And then, I think it's just because even with UCF faithful, because UCF faithful's been following football for the longest time. So this is the first time in a while. This is truly the first time this season that UCF men's basketball does not have football to compete with anymore. And now,
although it looked like for a while that we did with our former coach freaking taking forever to play and the game gets moved. I mean, I was thinking to myself, this team is cross-crunch. But
yeah, now here's the tweet that is interesting. So I don't know if you guys heard this, but Mike O'Donnell tweeted out
our good friend
after the game at 9
UCF alum Mike O'Donnell.
The game. He said, I tried to tell a lot of folks two things about this at UCF MBB team. 1, NCAA tournament talent. 2, Darren Green Jr. needs to be in the conversation as one of the most lethal shooters in the nation. And speaking of which, you guys were talking about Matt Williams. Did a little bit of digging. This is his 7 made 3-pointers tonight, ties for the 5th most in program history, alongside Matt Williams against Florida Tech, Mike O'Donnell himself versus Rollins in 2006, Gary Johnson versus UConn, and Harry Kennedy versus Southeast Louisiana State. And the last time that anybody at all has scored that many 3-pointers, Matt Williams versus USF in January 2017 when he scored 11. That's how long it's been since someone has scored that many 3-point shots in a single game. Absolutely phenomenal from Darren Green and Brandon Mahan. Those two combined for 62% of UCF's total scoring points. Absolute domination from the two of them tonight.
I do want to point out something that kind of elevates Green's results. Those first 2 games he mentioned, the O'Donnell one and the Matt Williams one, those were against D2 schools. This is not a D2 school. Now this is a tournament quality Division I school, and he's still going off. So I mean that actually just elevates the value of what Darren Green did.
I mean, we've been talking about Matt Williams and I mean, for me, I just think the most impressive one is the fact that Matt Williams had his 11.3-pointer game against USF.
11 threes,
in 2017. This is the first time that anyone has scored 7 or more 3-pointers since then.
Well, and he made it look easy, and everybody's starting to pick up. John Rothstein, the College Basketball Insider, the best, I think to me, is the Adam
He was
Schefter.
hamming up before the game.
Yep. He goes, here's his tweet I'm posting. Don't call UCF the sleeper team in the American Athletic Conference anymore. Knights with a statement win over Michigan and Darren Green Jr. Intergalactic range. That's good way. So much, and again, he tweets again, so much Matt Williams and Darren Green Jr. So everybody's on the same page on this.
He's the reincarnation of Matt Williams. And what really set that off is he's like 4 or 5 feet behind the arc, and he just unloads it, and it's perfect. And that was Matt Williams' thing, because he could be anywhere on the court and hit a shot. But to answer Mike Doty's question, no, Southeastern Louisiana is a real school. They're in the Southland Conference. Southeastern Louisiana State is the water boy.
By the way, I want to bring up Lonely Bumblebee. Shame on us, Drew, as longtime UCF people. Lonely Bumblebee, bring it up. I think Florida was the biggest, quote, home win. Now, there's a quote, an asterisk there, because the game was at the Amway Center.
There's another reason why.
It's the Chandler. Oh, because it technically
because
happened,
UCF had to forfeit that game.
Yeah.
It's not
whatever.
It is what it is. The record.
I was in that building, man.
UCF winning that game.
I was in that building.
And they never will.
It happened. Well, I was in the building. It happened.
I watched it as it happened. I was freaking out when Marcus Jordan made that that shot that just, that was the winning shot to kind of
Yeah.
seal the deal.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, things happened. It's not in the record books. It'll never be official as a UCF win. I can't put it as the top. Besides the fact it wasn't at UCF's arena anyway. It was downtown.
Hey man, that was a good building.
That's like playing at Camping World. That's a neutral site.
So listen, I'll tell you a quick story about that. I was at the game covering it. A couple highlights there. Rich Waltz was doing play-by-play for that game. I think it was a Sun Sports it's now Bally, but it was used to the Sun Sports. Rich Waltz was a longtime Marlins play-by-play TV voice. So I got to meet him at that game. That was a blast for me. I know there's a mutual friend of ours that right now is cringing when he listens to that. Not as big of a Rich Waltz fan as I am. And then Jessica Blaylock, who you may see doing the Panthers and the Marlins and did the Magic sideline for a long time. I got to talk to her and hang out with her as well. So, look, it counts to me. As far as I'm concerned, it happened. It happened.
It happened. It just doesn't count. But no, it wasn't a home game either.
But, and it's funny, Drew, you bring that up because Taylor Young brought it up. And what's a shame, obviously.
UCF got screwed. That when it comes to the whole thing, UCF didn't really know what they were getting into. They got really hosed on this.
Well, some would argue they got thrown under the bus to kind of protect football.
They did. Totally.
Right. Yeah.
And the whole thing with AJ Romso is complete BS. The fact that he missed so many games over, and they had a close personal relationship before, I thought was absolutely ridiculous. But unfortunately, UCF chose not to fight the basketball stuff, and we just have to accept it for what it is.
Listen. I understand. You understand football. You protect football at all costs. So I get all that. But that was a
thing that they had a legit case on that.
Right, but there were some people that wondered if it, and we've talked about this on the podcast. They challenged the ruling. That was risky because nobody usually wins an appeal. Had they lost that appeal, UCF would not have been eligible in 2013 when they got to the Peach Bowl. Remember, a lot of people are like, just take the penalty in 2012. It's the last year in Conference USA. Who cares? They challenged it. They won. Had they lost that challenge of that appeal,
there was no Fiesta Bowl.
And boy, I don't. There'll be a lot of angry people. But the other thing that was disappointing, and what I meant was that from an on the court. It didn't matter because you're right, it was the NCAA violation, whatever. That was a team. They beat Florida. They beat Miami. We talked to Taylor Young about it. UCF got ranked for the first time ever. And they were undefeated going into conference play. They had a young freshman, Isaiah Sykes, Keith Clanton. That was a team that looked legit to be a Conference USA title contender and an NCAA tournament team. And they fell apart in the conference. They struggled and didn't even make the NCAAs. To your point, I think they ended up going to CBI. It was a big disappointment. And really, unfortunately, a negative, one of the many, reasons I think a lot of UCF fans, not the biggest Donnie Jones fans, but that was a disappointment. And it goes back to your original point we talked about earlier, Drew. We can't judge this win yet until we see what happens the rest of the way, because that's an example. You beat Florida. There's this great win. Florida, that was an Elite Eight team that year with Billy Donovan as the head coach and company. But UCF fell apart in conference play and didn't make the NCAAs, which does take a hit on that Florida win as a result. It doesn't have that significance, obviously, from that standpoint either.
Well, it's still, I would, rate it as one of the top two non-home games in UCF history, along with the Battle of Atlantis, where, UCF upset UConn and won the whole
Drummond
thing.
Well, in Florida State on the road last year was pretty good.
That's a good one. It's up in the pantheon of elite wins. It's not a home game. I'm going to die on that.
I agree. She put in Lonely's defense, it was a quote. It wasn't like she was being, serious.
Oh, I know. I just can't put it in the same category. It's a neutral set, but I'll put neutral and road together because you lose that home court advantage. Even though Michigan had a lot of fans there, you heard it. It was loud. That when you get that student section in there and, pound for pound, and I'll defend this. Pound for pound, UCF has one of the best and loudest student sections anywhere. It warms my heart to hear when they really get into something because man, they are powerful. They are hostile and makes a home court, home field advantage so valuable. And that's one of the cool things about college versus pro. Pro is very much more corporate, a lot more sterile from that aspect. You can't replicate the energy that a student section brings in a pro environment. It just, even the Seattle Seahawks, if you had that full of students, that would break the scale.
Well, let's ask a current student in our group here. Bryson, you're hearing what Drew is saying here. Why don't we get more consistency out of the students from a basketball
I did
standpoint?
not say more consistent. I did not say consistent.
Well, I'm saying it. I'm saying it.
All right.
Can we? Because that, I'm always told we can't be a basketball school. They only care about football. And I'm like, we can't be that short-sighted, can we? We can support multiple sports. And one of the things I liked is every time there's a good atmosphere, team plays well, there's a support. Can this program get the support from the fans? And in the defense of the student section, they show up most of the time. But let's be real. There's other times they don't, especially on a weekend afternoon games and things like that. Where do you stand on this as a current student? You're on campus a lot. Can basketball get that buzz? I've seen it happen on and off, but can it happen consistently?
So, yeah, and you talk about those weekend afternoons, nights thing, and I think the big thing is that what is the big event that a student's gonna want to go to? Football is usually that big one, especially when the two seasons are lined up together. Like because let's face it, UCF football is the thing that it has gained national notoriety a lot more than UCF basketball is. So if you have to choose between going to a UCF football game during a certain week where you have schoolwork to do too, and a UCF basketball game, you're going to go to the UCF football game, especially when that UCF football game is later in the season, while UCF basketball is still kind of, in the beginning of the season. And it's not until, the next calendar year, where the quote unquote big games, where the tournament picture starts to really come into more of a focus. That said, though, games like these marquee games, even if they're early in the season, produce a really great atmosphere. If you can that's why it's so important, I think, for Johnny Dawkins to schedule these kinds of games, because if you schedule these marquee type games, you are going to get people to show up. If you schedule it, they will come, I think is where the line is. I'm sure of it. No, I'm kidding.
He said this, but to your point, Dawkins mentioned that in his media day that he wants to schedule marquee games to bring the people of Central Florida. Look, we talked to Taylor Young on the podcast about this. Orlando's a competitive market, but there is an NBA team. Save your magic jokes for another time. All right, they are. It's an NBA property. It's entertainment. They haven't embraced. Drew is closing his mouth, rightfully so. There's a lot of things to do in Orlando from a sports standpoint, from an entertainment standpoint. So to your point there, Bryson, you gotta attract some marquee game. Now I will say this: in a couple of years,
that's not the only thing though, because I still cannot. Because I talk about timing. And not only for UCF did this come right after the football season ended with the Gasparilla Bowl, but think about the Michigan fans, because the Michigan fans are going to be playing down I-95 in the Orange Bowl later. So that means Michigan fans are essentially turning this into a Florida week-long vacation, because they can just leave this game and go down to Miami for the Orange Bowl in a few days. So there was
another loss. I mean, it'll be beautiful.
ESPN broadcast talked about it. There was a lot of Michigan fans there too. So
yeah, they were confused at times. Yeah.
The timing was absolutely critical for both of these programs, and it ended up turning into, in my opinion, one of the biggest college basketball matches of tonight.
It was the marquee game of the night.
I would say it was definitely the marquee game of the night. There was, people who pay attention. There was a lot of buzz. I mean, this is the same team that beat Florida State. The team hasn't changed. The only difference is they're not all getting hurt with COVID. So you're seeing what we should have saw last year. You're seeing the real UCF, and they're standing up.
And Johnny Dawkins has that cachet in college basketball. He brought that.
He does. And, the more you produce, the better the chance you are of being able to bring in more guys to be able to keep this up. Because, obviously, we know college sports is cyclical outside of a select few schools. But, I mean, you have to build some momentum. And last year was rough. The momentum wasn't there. But they were able to move some pieces around. They got a true center in place now. And it's really changed the dynamics of this team. We're seeing a lot more similar to when Taco Fall was here, where just the middle of the court is just disrupted. In fact, I'd venture to say that it's a more potentially balanced team just because everyone on the court is a real scoring threat, more so than just either a shooter or a dunker in between.
Well, about momentum. No one right now has more momentum than Darren Green Jr. I'm going to read you. Jonathan Gavoni, who's an NBA draft analyst at ESPN, tweeted out during the game, bunch of NBA scouts in the building here to watch. So he was at this game. Jonathan Gavoni, that's a big deal. Michigan to watch Michigan prospects, but it's UCF's Darren Green Jr. stealing the show with an incredible shooting exhibition, coming off screens, pulling up off the bounce, and throwing in threes well beyond NBA range. 27.7 of 9 from so far in the game. That was during the game. A lot of scouts at the game, and Darren Green made a name for himself. And man, I'm super fired up for him because he worked his tail off. Remember, he put himself in the NBA draft last year to get feedback, and clearly he listened to whatever the feedback he got back. He's a much different player. He's making himself some future money here, boys, with the way he's playing.
Oh yeah.
And that's what this is all about. That's why they designed the new draft system where you can declare, you basically talk to scouts and stuff, you find out what they want, and then you come back. I think that's a great thing that
would you like to see that in football? Would you like
Absolutely.
to see that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they have a thing where you can submit your name and they kind of give you a little bit of a guesstimate, but the deadline for committing to the NFL draft or declaring for the draft is early January. It's like barely after the season's over. That's real short time. I remember when Blake Bortles, before he committed, he had a very short window to make that decision, between the Fiesta Bowl and when he actually declared. So I would love to see something where they can pull back on it. The only negative to that is college football signing day in February potentially disrupts things because you're recruiting based on the personnel you have left at that point. I know most of the signings done in the early signing period, but there are still signings done in the real signing day in February. To be honest, I would love to see kind of the merge into a single one, maybe in January, and as opposed to having them split for a variety of reasons. But that's a whole nother show to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. But look, Darren Green's going to be in the NBA real quick. He's going to be in the NBA. I didn't believe that about a year ago, but the way I've seen him play, because the league is going to want shooting. They always want shooting. But Darren has shown this season that he's not just a spot-up shooter. He's not just a shooter. He can put the ball in the basket. He's got a step-up, a nice median range game.
And he can pass the ball.
Oh, yeah, he made a great pass. There was a pass he made to Mbake late in that second half for a layup that was beautiful. He's so improved, and good for him. And a great example of how the rules there about entering the draft, like you mentioned, Drew, and coming back benefits a guy like that. I'd like to see that in football as well. I think that would help some guys that maybe declare with me, not getting, there's nothing wrong with having more information in this deal there.
Right, and we've seen football players do that, like a Jacoby Glenn or a Dredrick Snelson who declared and didn't get sniffed at the draft and ended up kind of just quietly disappearing. I would love for an opportunity for those players to get more information, make a better decision, and not have to set themselves up like that where there's no recourse. It's once you've hit that declaration deadline, that's it. I would love to see something that they can step back, maybe give them an extra month or month and a half, because the draft's not for a few months after that. So I mean, as long as you come back before the combine, I think you should be fine. I'd love to see that something like that designed, just so that these players don't get caught listen to bad advice. Maybe a parent got in their ear, oh, you can go make some money in the pros. They make a bad decision and now they're stuck. So I'd love to see a way to be able to come back from that.
Agreed.
I wanted to just say this because I know we've been giving a lot of love to Darren Green, and for sure well deserved. He had an absolutely great game tonight, as we talked about the Matt Williams record. But throughout this broadcast, I felt like we've been neglecting a little something. I want to read this tweet from Luke Hetrick, who's a sports anchor for My News 13.
360,
He said the rest of the country needs to see Darren Green Jr. and Brandon Mahan in March, two of the purest shooters in the game. UCF is every bit of a tournament team. And I know we've been talking about Darren Green Jr., but you look at Brandon Mahan, he was the other part of that 62 of the duo that scored 62% of UCF's points. He got 5 out of 6 from the free throw line. He had 7 rebounds, tied for the most with Mbake Diong. And I mean, Brandon Mahan absolutely excelled on both sides of the ball. Darren Green obviously had the long ball going, but Brandon Mahan was going on both ends of the court and absolutely excelling the entire time as well.
But here, and Drew brought this up earlier. The thing with Mahan is he's just not consistent. He hasn't shown this consistently enough. He's been inconsistent. When he's playing at this level, he's exciting, but there's games where he doesn't perform, and that's going to be the key the rest of the year. Can he put consistent performances? Now, in his defense, he has played better in the last 4 games or so, but got to be consistent. That's going to be the key in conference play is he's got to, because what happened last year was once he had the big game against Florida State, teams like Houston, who are really good defensively, in this league, a lot of teams do play well defensively, they focused on Brandon Mahan, and he had no real counter to that.
Yeah. Now I also have a question. I have a question, and it's kind of a question for you, Drew, because you've mentioned how this Michigan team is a little bit down from like the preseason depictions of where they had him at like number 15 in the country or something like that. So looking at the comparison, Michigan's had a 40% field goal percentage tonight, and a 41% 3-point field goal percentage. Compared to that, UCF has a 52% field goal percentage, 60% 3-point field goal percentage. You look at the offensive rebounds, though. Michigan absolutely blew UCF out of the water in offensive rebounds, getting 13 while UCF had 5. So
a lot of that early, though. A lot of that early.
But my question to you is do you think that this was a something where you diagnose what went wrong with Michigan is that they just couldn't really make enough? So obviously the defense was in question because UCF went on that big scoring run, but that differential in scoring percentage with that offensive rebound thing, they had the shots to do it, like getting the rebounds back. So is it just a matter of they weren't really good from shooting perspective, or just on that?
Well, I mean, when you have to look at it in 2 different ways. You look at their 3-point percentage, a little short of 41. That's actually pretty good. That's not bad at all. I mean, I would take 41% 3-point shooting every game. I'll take that in a heartbeat. Their problem was they struggled in the inside game, and that's because UCF's interior defense is really strong, and that's what a lot of that 40% from the field was coming from. On the flip side, 60% is unsustainable in 3-point shooting. You can't expect that. UCF's second half was just absolutely out of this world. As I said early on before you came on, you put the Konami code in, you got all those lives in contra, but you can only do it once. And once you've done it, that's it. They did it going in the second half and just absolutely exploded. But you can't bank on that. Right. You have to bank on more realistic numbers. I mean, 8 for 10 for Mahan, 10 of 13 for Green, total from the field. That's not realistic shooting. For guys that are shooting from the outside, from the mid range, and sometimes inside, that's not realistic. So you have to look at it in 2 ways. You got to look at on the good side from the defensive standpoint, but you also have to understand and accept the fact that those offensive numbers from those 2 are not sustainable the way they are. They can score 27 points and 26 points, but on the shooting percentage that you can't bank on that. So you have to expect Darius Perry to go better than 0 for 9 from the field. You have to expect CJ Walker to take more than 2 shots or make 2 shots. He only took 3. Isaiah Adams, you got to figure something out with him. Obviously he's taken a step backwards, and that part of that is the depth of the team kind of rising up. Darius Johnson, I'm enjoying to seeing his growth. I'd like to see him become a little more aggressive and kind of follow Perry's lead on that. But that's kind of more of a secondary want, not a need.
And it's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming.
Now, my other question is 2 other big differentials in stats that I'm seeing with the comparisons. Assists. UCF 20 assists, Michigan 11, and then also in fast break points, UCF got 16, Michigan got 6. Can you just kind of look at UCF, how UCF did as far as transition? Because obviously 3 points.
Well, the transition is a bigger stat there because the assist, a lot of it is, make or miss, right? I mean,
well, and on the transition, a lot of that is a guy makes a steal and he makes one, there's one or two passes with the extra man and they put it away, that 4-point swing, they get the steal, the dunk, they're down 1, they steal the inbounds pass, they put it away, they take the lead, crowd erupts, the energy is gone from Michigan, and basically they're hanging on. They're no longer in control of this game, and they closed in, and it became a little back and forth for a short, but they never really had control. The UCF crowd became electric. They got back into the game. That was the cap of coming back from double digits down. Remember, so at that point, the momentum was all in UCF's favor.
Well, and the thing that struck me in the broadcast room, we'll get to the broadcast questions, folks. I know I'm seeing them. We'll get to what happened at the beginning of the game. We'll get to the crew. I know you people are talking about it. We'll get to it. I promise you. I've not forgotten. But, hey, we won. We got a lot of comments, a lot of feedback, which is good. Johnny, one of the things they said was fascinating. Coach Dawkins talked about pushing the tempo. He wanted to go up tempo. That's, some of that is because he wanted to use the depth, but I think he wanted to Michigan hadn't played in a while. Maybe he felt he can wear him down. But, this team.
Tall.
And they're tall, right? And
they're tall. That hurts speed, and you want to tire them.
Right. And this team could do it, though. Past UCF teams couldn't. Past UCF teams could especially when you had Taco, you couldn't really run with Taco as much. This team can run and push the tempo and get some baskets that way. And their defense, turning Michigan over, helped in that too. And so I thought that was a big factor into the transition points as well. I mean, but look, it's a make or miss league. I mean, UCF shot 60% from the 3-point line tonight. I mean, if you do that, you're going to beat a lot of teams. So it's one of those matches.
You beat any team. Let's be honest. You do that for an entire game, you're winning your game. Just law of averages on that. Because your overall field goal percentage is going to probably be pretty good. Because in college ball, you're not going to just like shoot up 2 or 3 3-pointers. No. That's not happening. You're putting up 10, 12, 14, if not more. That's how normal college ball looks. So, I mean, if you're putting 60% up, you're beating anyone. So I mean, it's awesome. This is what could happen when everything comes together in a singular moment in the single half. But don't bank on it. That's what I'm saying is don't expect that. Expect the team to do well, but I mean you can't expect those kind of numbers. They're just not sustainable.
But I do think this team has shown they can win some different ways. Think back to the Temple win a few weeks back on the road. Ugly first half, couldn't get anything going offensively. They sped up the game in the second half, wore down Temple with their defense and some different pairs. So this team has different ways to win, and that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Depth. Remember, last year they didn't have depth. They didn't have players in key positions. They had to play positionless basketball. They don't have to play positionless basketball this time. It actually gives them a lot more versatility in what they do. You've got multiple players on the depth chart that can shift around from that experience, and because of that, you can play the up-tempo game, and you can substitute talented players in to maintain it. A lot of teams, especially the American, they may have a decent front line, but they're not going to have a decent second unit, and that's where you take advantage of. You tire them, and so the first half was kind of, I don't want to say putzing around because that's not the right term, but they couldn't really find themselves. They were making a lot of unforced errors, mental mistakes. Halftime, and this goes back to how good a coach Johnny Dawkins is. He got them to tighten up, and he then outcoached Juwan Howard in strategy. He saw what Michigan was bringing. They planned. They were able to hang around, and then things just started to work. And I think that's partly why Mahan and Green had so many open looks. Is they added the extra pass. They were moving a lot quicker down the court. They were wearing down Michigan. Michigan was getting into foul trouble, which a lot of times is a result of fatigue. And it all adds up.
Yeah, you're talking about the foul trouble. You're talking about that foul trouble. I mean, if you're looking at the difference between the first half and the second half, UCF went 5 for 7 in the first half in the free throw line. The next half, 10 for 13, almost double the free throw shots they had from the first half to the second half. But I think the other big thing that honestly for me was the major tale of this game is that between Michigan and UCF in the second half managed to they shot the ball less, but they managed to take advantage of it every single time.
Well, they were efficient. When you make shots, you're efficient.
Right. But with Michigan, it's a complete opposite effect. Michigan went 14 for 36 in the first half, while the second half they went for 11 for 27. So they didn't really shoot the ball off that much, and they made less shots than they did.
Well, and part of that is they started settling for 3-pointers.
Yep.
And they weren't getting as many offensive rebounds, so they weren't getting as many second chances. That was the big thing that was hurting them in the first half was all those second chances. But if you look at those stats again, they both shot 33% from the field in the first half. I mean, it was an ugly first half, but that's what we've seen out of UCF from a defensive side. They make teams play below their season averages in shooting. That's what they do, which, if you can't take advantage of that, leads to a halftime deficit. But what we saw in the second half, even if you scale it down a little bit, not away from the 60%, from 3-point line for the game, actually was 100% in the second half. Scale that down a little bit, and UCF is still, way ahead by making all these mistakes. They were ahead in the fouls. They didn't
turn the ball over.
They didn't turn the ball over in the second half. They were much cleaner on turnovers. 4-3. One thing that I noticed is the minutes distribution. UCF had 2 players, Green and Mahan, who played 18 out of the 20 minutes in the second half. No one else played more than 13, whereas you had 2 players from Michigan, Jones and Brooks, play all 20, and Dickinson played 18. That's a lot. They've already played a lot to begin with. In fact, Dickinson and Jones played 18 in the first half. So when you actually look at it from the whole, the top 3 minute eaters of this game were all on Michigan's side. That's a sign of growing fatigue. Dickinson, 4 fouls.
And that's why Dawkins wanted to push the game up tempo because he felt he knew he had more bodies.
Well, and you can create errors that way. You don't give a team a chance to settle down, to reset, hit their defensive sets. You push the ball. You get them off balance. You make them jump without being set, and you're going to get called for the foul, especially a big man. You take it right to a big man's face. When you're going, driving up the, going up the court and slashing down the side. You want to take it towards a center or a power forward who's not going to have a chance to set their feet and maybe in the circle, and you're going to draw a foul.
Speaking of big man, Mbake Diong and CJ Walker, even though Green and Mahan obviously took a lot of the attention with their scoring, I really like what they were doing as far as rebounds. And even Mbake Diong got 9 points, which is the 3rd most any player on this team scored.
Well, defensively,
right.
That's
but
their game. Yeah.
But one moment that really stood out to me in this game that I still remember is from CJ Walker, where basically what happened is they were covering some of the kind of close to the basket, and one of the UCF defenders that was covering the ball handler got drawn away. And so Michigan guy was going to go around and get it. CJ Walker came right towards the basket, manages to swat the ball away, but then he just slams down on his tailbone, taking all of that hit.
And he got called for a foul too.
Right, exactly. But that moment right there really stuck out and really, I think, showed me how impressive this front court, Mbake Diong and CJ Walker, the big men of this team, are, and I guess again they talked about how going up them, talk about the depth, and just talk about how talented this team is. And I think above all, tonight this team showcased the talent that it has, and that talent I think is NCAA tournament worthy, as a lot of people are talking about.
Hopefully, let's hope.
Yeah, hopefully about that. But I think it showcased their defensive talent more than anything.
Yes,
because Mbake, his ability is to disrupt. He doesn't have to actually do anything, like Taco Fall. His ability is to disrupt, And there was a sequence where he had a block, but was taken out of the play because of the block. And then C.J. Walker swatted the ball out of bounds. And of course, the fans get riled up and excited because, it's a great defensive sequence. That's what these two players bring is a defensive energy. They may not do all this, more blue collar work. They're not sinking the threes and whatnot, but they're getting dirty. Defense is dirty, and that's where champions are made. Is you got to stop the other team. The offense will find a way, and we saw it today. Players get hot, they find a way, but if you can't play defense, if your defense is more religious than Kevin Love, full of holes,
wow,
you're not gonna win. Yeah, I know. I'm Cleveland guy making fun of Kevin Love's lack of defense. I know, but seriously, it comes down. CJ Walker is he's an energy player. He's a high energy, high flyer. That's the stuff he gets. He reminds me of a more talented Chad Brown. A guy who's willing to get dirty.
I agree with that.
Smack the ball, take a hit.
An athletic version of Chad Brown. A more talented
a little more athletic, a better offensive player, more potential. But I see very similar. See a lot of similarities in their mentality of just get in the trenches, the defensive trenches. It's not glorious and it hurts, but hey, it leads to a win.
All right, this is Night Shift here on the Black and Gold Banneret, where you're tuning in. Eric Lopez, Drew Gluchov, Bryson Turner. A couple quick notes here before we move on to some of the television perspective. Because I thought for a while that was going to be our main subject on this show. Mike with a great stat, Mike Doty, 78.5% of the Michigan's minutes were in their starters. 66% were from UCF starters. UCF's main players were considerably more rested. I agree with that. Gus Malzahn has chimed in with his opinion on this game, and I think it's an important one on Coach Gus on the Twitter. A dominant win for UCF men's basketball over Michigan. Congrats, Coach Dawkins. #charge on. So Gus has spoken.
We like seeing these inner sport support. That's important. You want the different programs to support each other because you want the students to also support the different sports, and I think they kind of feed off each other.
Lonely Bumblebee going after you, Drew, saying Kevin Love locked down Steph Curry in Game 7.
Blind squirrel finds nut. Yeah, I watched that game. I cried afterwards. In a good way.
A lot of people. I was going to say in a good way. Let's get into the television side of things, because there was a lot of drama with this, especially at the beginning when this game didn't air on ESPN2. The first half basically was airing on ESPN News because our old buddy Josh Heupel and Tennessee. Here's a shocker for all of us. He lost a close game where his team couldn't play a lick of defense. Where have we heard that before, Drew? So as a result of that game taking forever, which was another patented pattern Josh Heupel specialty, playing marathon games, the Peach Bowl and that garbage, worthless exhibition between Pittsburgh and Michigan State was moved to ESPN2.
Without Pickett or Walker, mind you.
Yeah, but bowl games, we have too many. Anyway, so that got moved to the Deuce, and as a result, men's basketball got bumped to ESPN News. My phone and my timeline exploded. There were people literally angry, trying to find the game. Why isn't my game on? Where is it airing? And Drew, you were telling me you were having trouble getting the game online, correct? What was going on there?
The problem was they didn't update the app. ESPN, they put the games on as they start. Well, I'm looking. I see Music City Bowl on ESPN, Peach Bowl on ESPN2. I'm scrolling through all the plus stuff, nothing. And it took a while. I think it was 16-14 during that timeout. By the time that the ESPN News stream, as Mike Doty says, ESPN Plus didn't list it at all because it was never meant to be on ESPN Plus.
Correct.
So it was never going to be there. So I'm looking, I'm like, well, maybe they moved it for overflow, but I couldn't find where they moved it. Found out it was ESPN News. It wasn't until it was 16-14 they actually updated the broadcast to be able to access it, and you were able to access it through the first half. and then it moved over to ESPN2. But the handoff on this was just absolutely horrendous. And heck, I have to talk about the game, and I can't see the beginning. And so I'm busy pestering, Kyle Nash, who's there covering the game for us, to kind of tell us what are we seeing, because we're not seeing anything.
I have ESPN News, so I was fortunate, but I was very much in the field. My phone was like, where is this game? And I had to tweet everybody what was going on. But again, blame Josh Heupel for this, because he was playing. What bowl game was he playing at?
The Music City Bowl,
in Nashville.
Home bowl in Tennessee, which by the way, that had its own complete Twitter blow up because of people saying he got the touchdown. Like, well, it was a very dramatic game. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. If you like no defense and like mediocre play, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this was a Heupel game in a heartbeat. Just naturally where defense.
Yeah, Drew. This is what I want right now. This is what I want for old time's sake. Hold on, for old time's sake, Drew. Give me a quick notes, knee-jerk reaction to a Josh Heupel game, which you were very familiar with, because it was funny. I didn't see the game because I don't watch bowl games unless UCF's playing. I could care less. There's only 3 games
because it impacted your ability to watch.
Yes, it did, and of course it had to be Josh Heupel, of course, and that. Because early in the game, I guess he was doing well, but he's like, man, Josh Heupel, Tennessee fans are all excited. Oh, look at all this offense. And then, of course,
second
at the
quarter,
end.
they wet the bed. Purdue came back in. By the way, Purdue's quarterback is a walk-on who threw for over 500 yards. Congratulations, Tennessee. You lost to a walk-on at quarterback, and he threw for over 500 yards. I mean, maybe it
wasn't Randy Shannon's fault after all, right?
No, Randy Shannon had no chance to make it work. I mean, Tennessee gets the ball. It's I can't remember if it was third, fourth quarter, and they're near their goal line. And what do? A prompt 3 and out, and they punt it. I mean, the defense had no chance to rest. They're giving up big plays. I mean, the touchdown by the tight end at 67-yarder where he breaks 3 guys trying to tackle him, and then carries a couple into the end zone on this rumble that was just absolute highlight worthy. I mean, that's the Heupel defense in a nutshell. Those guys were tired. They're just hanging on the guy, and he's just running in. You can't stop him. Obviously, there was some controversy in this one. It went into overtime. Controversy on 4th and goal. Heupel the game. Instead of settling for the guaranteed points, he went for it. And in a very controversial manner, was ruled short of the goal line, and I can see where
they blew the whistle, right? Momentum. They stopped. They said that the momentum was stopped.
Here's the thing, and you're going to get arguments on this one. The whistle didn't blow. However, the ref who was managing that side, the referee on that side, started to wave to rule him down. The whistle hadn't gone yet, but he basically said it's at this point, because the reach happened at the very end. So that's why it went to review, and that was the explanation that Josh Heupel gave or was given. Are you bleeping kidding me?
That was funny. That was good TV. Yeah, that was good.
No, we're not kidding. You should have kicked the field goal, gone for the points, and played for the next over. Because you know what? You stopped Purdue on the following possession, but they kicked the field goal and won the game. Oh, too bad.
And what do you know? Another one-score loss. He's now 3-10 in one-score games. And for you Tennessee fans, look, he's a good guy. Nothing personal. This is more of a sports critique than personal. Nothing personal. And look, they got to a bowl game, and look, Tennessee's been so bad that they'll take anything. But I was seeing some of the people, they were talking like, man, he's going to lead us to the like, you're not going to win anything relevant. He just doesn't get it. He's an offensive coordinator that's playing a head coaching role. Their defenses are going to be terrible. Teams will figure him out by year 3. They're not going to win anything meaningful. And they find ways to lose games. Like my big conclusion from all this, there's no way UCF would have won 9 games if Josh was still here.
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. Not in the slightest. Maybe half that. Maybe 4.5.
I'm sorry I'm sorry I went ahead and brought this up because you guys seem to have gotten really mad.
Yeah, I'm mad because
It made you watch a bowl game. This made you watch a bowl game, Eric. How dare they ESPN make you watch a bowl game?
I watched two bowl games today.
Drew likes this stuff. I don't. I had to pay attention, though, to a Josh Heupel game, which I don't. I went through this for 3 years.
I had to watch mayonnaise.
Don't even get me started on that.
Hey, at least for the memes, that was pretty funny. But look,
how long is this
in
game?
slow motion. I mean, the spot afterwards looked like an alien got murdered. I mean, I've actually that poor guy. I mean, his hair is going to be great because I mean that's probably like killer conditioner. My God, you're gonna be smelling like mayonnaise for weeks.
Now, I wanted to ask you though, Drew, because I also watched the game on ESPN on the ESPN app, and so, but I went about it maybe a little differently from you, or maybe you didn't, or maybe you did. But what I did when I looked for the game is that I went immediately to either the NCAA men's basketball tab, the little circles that down a little scroll down a little ways. It's either the NCAA men's basketball thing or the American Athletic Conference icon. I clicked on either one of those because I had to go to change rooms when I was watching because
it shouldn't be that complicated.
So, it's not complicated at all. You literally scroll down like just a little bit, and it's right there. And it's right there. My point is that it's not like on the upper icons or on the upper screens or whatever that are at the very top. But when you look at, when you go to like the AAC home, that's how I watch all the other ESPN Plus UCF content, and I get to that like right away. So I don't know. I mean, all I'm saying is that my experience with the ESPN app was a lot simpler this time.
I'm normally, you just go and you can find it even if you scroll down, like you were saying. Of course, I click on it at 7:00 and it says it hasn't started yet. So I was like, well,
I'm still old school. I'm watching on television here, so I can flip a channel.
Well, you still use rabbit ears.
No, I'm not yet. We haven't gone that far yet.
I will say now. It's funny because I had that problem with the ESPN app before, Drew. I had that issue with the other ESPN event on UCF event on ESPN. It was a soccer game. And I went ahead and just left it there. And that before 7, I clicked on it and it just said, blah, 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 7. I just left it there because I thought it was going to start while I was doing my research. And
we can make
starts and it didn't change. And I'm like, crap. So
I didn't leave it.
What that taught me is unless the red live is being shown in the bottom left corner of the icon of the game, don't click on the game until that happens and refresh the screen until you see it, because that was another thing.
Well, I did that too. It was just the handoff between the networks. Just it didn't update. It took a while.
Look, and we can make all the excuses and reasons. There's one person to blame for this, and it's Josh Heupel. Because with Josh Heupel, you're going to get 4.5-hour games because, God forbid, you run a play every 2 seconds, and the clock has to stop after first downs, and nobody plays defense. It's flag football.
Don't forget all the fake injuries. There was a lot of them.
I bet. Wow, what a shot! Well, it's guy like turn back the clock, and it's another one score loss. Can we just get Tennessee on the schedule already? Come on, what are we waiting on? Let's get Tennessee on the schedule.
I want the loser to have to deal with having mayonnaise poured on.
Actually, the problem is, though, I mean, actually playing Tennessee will probably hurt our schedule strength, really. The way
I want French's to create the French's Mustard Bowl, and I will sign up for that one.
All right, so
I think we'll just have to see what the schedule openings would be. I found this other tweet I wanted to say though, because I know we talked a lot of negative about Josh Heupel. That it's fun to do it. I had a lot of fun.
Man, it's pretty accurate.
But I think that I want to bring this back around because I just found this tweet from David Bauman that I think was really good. It quoted the @UCF Night Twitter account that said, "Been a pretty good week," and showed a picture of the UCF Michigan game, and then showed a picture of Ryan O'Keefe during the Gasparilla Bowl. And you look at David Bauman, and I want to see what your thoughts on this, Eric and Drew, because I think you'll relate to this a lot more than I can. And that is, imagine 10 years ago saying UCF would beat Florida in football and Michigan in basketball in the same week. This program's rise has been something special.
Yeah. Look.
Way down the pipe, man.
First of all, a couple of things. David Bauman, good to see him. I produced his morning show. He's a good friend. I've done spotting for him when he's done broadcasts, so I know David for a long time. I'm just happy he's tweeting something other than the Magic. The poor guy has been a loyal cover of the Magic. Nothing positive has happened there in a decade. And here's a good one, UCF with the, back to back there. So I'm just glad he's tweeting something that's not Magic related.
Hey, has the Magic been demoted to the CBA yet?
Not yet. But look, it's been a good week. Maybe the better question is, should UCF just move all their sporting events to Thursday night? Think about the win against Florida, the win against Michigan, the Boise State game, although technically that was a Friday morning game.
It started on Thursday, though.
It started.
It just took a while.
There you go. So why not? Let's have every game moved to Thursday, huh? Thursday night.
That was a very late night for me. I didn't get to bed at like 4 a.m.
We were on the air at 3 a.m. And we did a big number for that show. Bryson were you up with us, Bryson? I think you. I don't know.
Yes. Yes, I was.
Wasn't that the one where I snuck in and did it in my car?
Yes.
Yes.
And we felt, and we said, let's not make Drew do that ever again.
Which I have not.
No, let's get him let's get him out of the building there. So anyway, that's what happened with the TV side of things. And, it's just unfortunate. Look, I can't blame the networks because football does draw bigger viewers, even in a garbage game like the Peach Bowl. So I understand the moves they made. I don't blame
the Peach Bowl. The Peach Bowl was on its schedule. It's not
I would have, just start the Peach Bowl on ESPN News, man. Who cares? Like, none of the marquee guys are playing. It's Pitt and Michigan State. But no, you're right. Look, at the end of the day, football is going to get priority over basketball in a situation like that.
Music City Bowl. Blame Josh.
That's what I'm saying. Josh Heupel. Like old days. Let's just blame Josh because, again, you can't play a lick of defense, and he makes questionable play calling, and they lose by 1 score. So nothing's changed.
A walk-on quarterback.
And he's the guy that could win the Steve Spurrier Award you were telling us about on the podcast? Are you kidding?
Josh Heupel was one of we all know who the guy who's going to win it. And I'll give you a hint. It's not Gus Malzahn.
Who's your pick?
It's Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer's going to win that. He Heupel, and Malzahn were the 3. Shane Beamer has done an absolutely magical job at South Carolina with a big single season turnaround at 2 wins last year. I don't know if you checked Twitter, but apparently Dennis Dodd has become the national villain right now because he poo-pooed the whole mayo thing. Look, I don't like mayonnaise, but hey, it was a cool gimmick. People enjoyed it. People tuned in for a non-New Year's Bowl game to watch this stuff. It was great for ratings, and also it was a good little bit of money for charity. So I mean, everyone won. And both coaches were firmly on board of doing this. Are
you suggesting the college media, football media, grouchy? No.
Well, I mean, we all know Dennis Dodd is, but apparently Dennis Dodd said the ceiling for South Carolina at Media Day was 2 wins. And
he wasn't
Shane
alone
Beamer on Twitter. Let him have it. And, national media members, all over the place joined in. Dodd needs to kind of take the L on this one. He got heavily taken to task. But I think this cements Shane Beamer as the guy who should win the Spurrier Award.
In spirit of dunking on Josh Heupel some more, I just found this Christian Simmons tweet. One thing that hasn't changed about Heupel since he left for Tennessee. Volunteers went 1-3 in single-score games this year.
I'm shocked he didn't critique their jerseys. But anyway, let's move on that. By the way, of that award,
I'm not touching that one.
Why is Blake Anderson? Let me ask you this, Drew. In all seriousness, why wasn't Blake Anderson nominated for that? Took a Utah State team, and Mike brought this up now. 1 win to 11.
I thought Blake Anderson should have gotten heavy consideration. The problem is you can only narrow it down to 3, and Tennessee had a massive amount of transfers out. That was a team that was patched together. I have to give Heupel a lot of credit on that one. That was not a team that was expected to do anything this year. South Carolina, another team that was not expected to do anything this year. And then Malzahn, his nomination goes back to the fact of they are recognizing the amount of injuries that UCF has had to deal with,
including Malzahn
himself too, and they excelled. I think Anderson was more deserving than Heupel, but Shane Beamer, who should win it, is an excellent guy though.
Yeah, no, I think he should get recognition. That's a heck of a job he's done turning that program around. Speaking of coaches, Johnny Dockets, who knows? Maybe he could, if UCF keeps playing this way, he could be up for some national awards. That's a cheap way to bring up the fact that he had these comments courtesy of our good friend Trace Trelko, who covered the game over there video-wise. Here's what Mr. Johnny Dawkins had to say about the UCF win and whether he was surprised by it or not.
Our guys, the shots you see our guys shooting in the games are the shots our guys shoot in practice. And so that's why I have so much confidence in what they're able to do, because I get to see it every day. And so nobody's out there doing anything I hadn't already seen them do. And I've seen Darren Green take, 25, 28, 30-footers, when he's in rhythm like he was tonight. And we're fine with that because, we believe in him and we've seen him have success doing it.
That was Johnny Dawkins. Not surprised by the shooting because he sees it in practice, boys. Very confident. And he said this all year, especially about Darren. He's seen it with the hard work, and that's why he trusts going to Darren in big situations there. But that was Johnny Dawkins on whether he was surprised by the performance there.
I think it goes back to the fact that he says he has faith. He trusts his players because it's stuff he's seen before. That's a very motivating thing. You even after the win to say, hey, I have trust in my players and what they do, brings them up. You got even in bad situations, you still got to bring a degree of positivity in there. These are still kids. They're not professionals. They're still learning. They're still kind of figuring themselves out. You have to have still that level of nurturing to bring them up and to give them that stamp of approval. Say, I have faith in what my guys are doing. I've seen this before. I know they can do it again. Is going to motivate them to try and make it happen again. You want that confidence. You want that we can beat anyone mentality. You have that. You can then beat anyone. Any team can win any game on any given day. It's why we play the games. But if you don't have the confidence to do it, you're never going to do it. So I think these are really good comments as we get into conference play to keep positive momentum going towards, this is a team that can compete for a league title. Houston is vulnerable. The hope is that UCF is able to ride the wave, and that Houston can hold on for dear life so that, the Knights can smack them in the face and knock them down when the time comes for them to play. Obviously we don't know. Houston's dealing with a lot of injury issues. Thankfully, knock on wood, UCF hasn't yet. And
and this is the thing. The biggest thing I think for not just UCF, but for the rest of college basketball in the and John Rossing has tweeted this out, and it's true, is think positive and test negative. And I think we all know what that means with all the protocols and testing that's going on. I mean, you've seen UCF women's basketball couldn't play against Princeton. Now their game against Temple, their conference opener against Temple on Sunday, that's been scrapped. That's because Temple has some COVID protocol issues going on there. So I'm just saying that could be as big of a factor. And we saw this last year, and unfortunately we're kind of seeing this again this year. Johnny Dawkins, by the way, the man is multitasking. He did the post-game interview, and of course, with the media, and now he's tweeting. Man, they stepped up big in a second half tonight. The guys were locked in. Night Nation was loud. Hashtag charge on. We talked about this earlier, Bryson, about the student section. And in fairness, they do come out more. This could be more of a call out for the general public in Central Florida to support this team, right? Some people have commented to me about our conversation on this. The students will be there most of the time. Could they be there every game? Maybe it's a lot to ask. Who knows? Yeah, you do have classes. But this is also the community's got to step up here and support this team. You can't use the excuse that the Magic are really good because they're not. This is a good product now. And football's over, to your point. And this is a good product overall. I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the year, but I think we all can agree. This is a good product. And I'm excited to see hopefully how this thing goes. But, right, Bryson, and I kind of put a bow on this topic. If this team can get that support from a fan standpoint, it can make a difference. And that could help them, too, win some of these games that we're talking about come conference play.
Oh, yeah, I think so, especially. I think so. Look, I mean, you talk about, Johnny Dawkins talking about having faith in his team. I think one of my favorite things about UCF as an athletic program is I think that almost every single coach that I have met or interacted with in any way, Johnny Dawkins, Gus Malzahn, Dana Boone with track and field, Todd Dagenet in volleyball, Tiffany Roberts, all these coaches are absolutely amazing coaches in their own ways. And in this case, it was a showcase tonight for Johnny Dawkins and his abilities right here. And I honestly think that should be enough because these are people you can rally around. And I think that they deserve to be rallied around. Like
Absolutely.
basketball, and one of the big differences I think between basketball and football is that basketball has a lot more pressure put on the individual than a football team might do. For instance, obviously, if you have that one big football player that everybody loves, you're going to draw some attendance for that. But there's 11 guys on the football field for one team at any one time. For basketball, there's only 10 players on the court for both teams. So in basketball, the individual pressure is, at least for drawing a crowd, I think is a little more heavy than it is in football. That's why I think UCF basketball got a lot of notoriety because Taco Fall was here, because Taco Fall can draw a crowd. Aubrey Dawkins, being the son of Johnny Dawkins, draws a crowd. This UCF basketball team, up until this point, maybe didn't really have that just yet. Didn't really have that kind of maybe single factor that could draw a crowd, and especially when you're competing with Gus Malzahn in football. But tonight we got an individual that is able to draw those crowds, because Darren Green doing what he did tonight, I think could be the impetus, especially now that football's out of the picture, can now maybe draw that crowd, because seeing what Darren Green, Brandon Mahan, and Bake Young, seeing what these talented players are able to do, I think that now this game gives the opportunity for the community to rally around this team. This is a performance that the community can rally around. And I think that especially it being the first game after football season is over is absolutely crucial for this team going forward, at least as far as an atmosphere goes.
Well, I think the point that it's after football's over, football, you mentioned, 22 guys on the field versus 10. The stadium's also 4 times the size. So, I mean, you have to fill in a lot more people. There's only so much time to go around, and the more games you have, we see this with baseball, the more games you have, the better the chance of people not going on a regular basis, because your time is valuable. You can only do so much. Hey, there's only 6 or 7 football games a year. That's fine. But, there's double the, amount plus of basketball games. Hell, I'm going to have to pick and choose which ones I go to.
Very true.
That's the nature of the beast. That's something that you're not going to be able to change that. It's just part of it. But you also have a smaller venue. So, basketball, like volleyball and other sports like those indoor sports, they're more intimate. You can have less people there and make a bigger impact. You have, even if you have, 3,000 students, they can be 3,000 very loud students, whereas you really need 10,000 students in the football stadium to do what they do. Obviously, there's more at every game than that, but I'm just saying you can have less than that and still be very effective.
Well, very true, very true. But my argument is that the idea of making people choose of whether to go to a sporting event or not, that's universal. The venue, at least as far as the size and the impact it has on the field of play, doesn't really enter into it. The universal factor is what draws you to go to a sporting event, and that's kind of what I was trying to say before.
Well, what should drive you is those 3 block letters. That's what should be driving you to go to a game.
I also will say this: with the current climate, everything, support can go in different ways. It's not just going there in person; it's watching the team play. And there's a lot of different variables to do it. Listen to games on the radio. Every game for UCF basketball is on the radio. Scotty Adams, congrats to you. Got to call a pretty significant win in there. With Taylor, who does a great job doing color. Mark obviously does all the games. So to me, there's a lot of different ways to support the basketball. And I think the positive, I will say this real quick, so we're going to wrap up this show because we get on a long time. The fact there was a lot of people upset that this game didn't air on ESPN2 to start is a positive. I like that a lot, right?
Because you were one of them.
Right. Well, yeah, darn right I was.
I was one. Well, I would have been fine either way if I could find the freaking game.
But I think people care, and I think that's what we're saying. People care, and let's support this team, man. This team's going to be fun. We'll see what happens moving forward.
Passion's a double-edged sword. The opposite of love is not hate; it's apathy. So we have a very passionate fan base at UCF, and that can go both ways. I've been on the receiving end of some very angry people on Twitter. Usually because they can't read the timestamp of my post.
What did JP Gilbert tell you now? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, JP.
No, JP was supposed to come ask questions. I'm very sad. I'm disappointed. I love that word.
Oh, no. He did. He asked about the broadcasters.
Okay, well, he didn't go on the YouTube, so I never get to see. Okay, he gets past that.
He asked about
you get to live for another day, JP.
Rich Hollenberg, John Crispin, Caldwell. Some people not a fan, which I called, by the way. We had our group chat. Remember, we had this debate internally about the broadcast. We go behind the scenes stuff. It's a unique style. It's more of a hardcore basketball broadcast. And yeah, they talked a lot about Michigan. Michigan was the high profile team. That tends to happen sometimes, especially in basketball. You're not as familiar with UCF. I didn't have as big of an issue. There was the one comment, and I think this was what JP was referring to. There was a comment, and Crispin, I like Crispin. He knows his basketball, but he tends to kind of get out of control sometimes. He was talking about how these kids don't remember the Fab Five. Well, of course they don't. The Fab Five was in the early 90s. Right, they were in the early 90s. Of course, they're not 30 years old, so he gets a little out of control there sometimes. But
most of these kids, only the upperclassmen were going to were around for 9/11. Most of these kids weren't even alive yet. So come on, you got to read the room a little bit better and understand.
Yeah, he kind of got ahead of him. So and sometimes
I think he got a little caught up because Jawan Howard is there and stuff. Hey, look, Johnny Dawkins played from 82 to 86. I was barely born when he played. Being born in 82. I'm old, I know. These kids, they don't, these players, they don't know as much about the seen in person coach legacy that these coaches had as players. All you can do is watch it on TV or something. If that's the worst that happened, that's really not bad.
No, I agree. So it was fine. It is what it is. But look, the most important thing is UCF won 85-71 over Michigan.
Yeah, if you don't like it, just mute it and put on the radio broadcast.
Yeah, or follow Drew and Kyle Nash, who's at the game, and myself as we tweet about the game.
Yeah, well, I was kind of mixed between the Music City Bowl just because it went into ludicrous speed in the fourth quarter, and trying to find the game.
Yeah, by the way, Eric Rivers, I have these notes. I have notes. I was going to bring up the Hula Bowl. I was going to bring up the year in the fall for soccer and volleyball, but because of Josh Heupel, can't do it. Sorry, we ran out of time.
And I was looking forward to doing that.
Blame Josh Heupel, but also it's probably, I'm kind of glad in a way because that means UCF won. I had material for either result, but it is. We will talk Hula Bowl. Keep it on blackandgoldbanneret.com. My two friends over here, Drew, and of course Bryson and Kyle, they're all on Hula Bowl project. That's all we're gonna say. It's a secret. They're on Hula Bowl assignment. They're working on. Keep it on blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the details. Kyle will have a recap of the UCF win over Michigan. We'll have the post-game press conference from Johnny Dawkins as well as on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to it, like us, and on Twitter and on Facebook. That's what we all like to see. UCF Banneret _SBN. Like us on Facebook, blackandgoldbanneret.com. TV numbers for Gasparilla Bowl. I have it up there. I was hoping to get some Michigan UCF basketball numbers. Going to be a little trickier since we only had a half a game on ESPN2, but we'll figure it out. But we'll be covering all UCF football, basketball, lots of football offseason news. That's year round. Somebody said football season's over. I know some of you are saying, no, it's not. It's never over. And you're right.
Let the silly season begin.
Exactly. But that will do it for this edition of Night Shift. Drew, Bryson, this was a fun one. Final Night Shift of 2021. What a last two shows in particular. Awesome. And always great to talk a UCF victory here with a basketball edition, beating Michigan 85-71. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yes, thanks for hanging. We appreciate it. Tune in next time.
It was a really fun show.
We'll talk to you again in 2022, but until then,
go to bed.
For everybody, this has been Night Shift on the Black and Gold Banneret. Good night.